Let's cross to our correspondent, Seema Gupta, who joins us from Rome as ever. Seema, first of all, let's look at the last leg of this trip. I mean, once again, the Pope is treading on something of a tightrope, really, in anything he says, perhaps?
Exactly. I mean, he's in Equatorial Guinea. Now, this is a country that's a former Spanish colony. It's on Africa's western coast, and where more than 70% of the population are Catholic. And he's met the president, Teodoro Obiang. Now, this is a leader who's been in power since 1979, making him Africa's longest-serving leader. And he has been accused by rights groups of corruption and authoritarianism. Now, this is an oil-rich country. Back in the 1990s, there was the discovery of offshore oil, and that transformed the economy. That said, though, more than half of the population of nearly 2 million people are living in poverty, and it's believed, according to rights groups, that the wealth instead is being held by the powerful. Now, we heard Pope Leo, though, speaking there, talking about the colonization of Africa's minerals and the lust for power, denouncing this concept of the lust for power. He met the leaders, he met Catholic leaders as well, and he quoted his predecessor, Pope Francis, because the 21st of April was, in fact, the first anniversary of Pope Francis's death, and he quoted his predecessor, who spoke out against income inequality, as well as the global economy that is often focused on protest. And while he didn't really call out on this alleged corruption of those in power, he said it was essential to discern the difference between what lasts and what passes, and how it's important to be free from the pursuit of unjust wealth. So really, you're right about treading that fine line. You're still a guest in that country, but you also want to get your message across that is against war, that is for peace and dialogue, and against inequality.
Seema, let's look at the trip as a whole now. I mean, thinking back just over a week ago, I mean, the start of it was rather overshadowed, wasn't it, by criticism, a bit of a spat, some might say, between the Pope and Donald Trump. Overall, though, I mean, do you think the Vatican will be pleased by how the trip's gone?
Well, it's interesting to look at what happened in the beginning and what's been going on throughout. Now, what we've seen in more recent days, of course, other than Algeria, which is a predominantly Muslim country, in the other countries, we saw Pope Leo being greeted by crowds of faithful. He's met with Catholic leaders. He's blessed lots of children. It's important to note that the continent of Africa accounts for some 20% of the world's Catholics, and it's a community that is growing as well. That's where the church is growing, and why it's important for the Pope to get up close and personal, if you like, with the faithful. But yes, we saw him very unusually speaking to reporters right at the start of the trip, and really responding to President Donald Trump's comments about him, criticize him for being a weak leader. And he said very clearly he is not afraid of the Trump administration. But normally, right at the beginning of the trip, the Pope just greets reporters and waits till the end to give a press conference and respond to questions. But I guess Pope Leo felt perhaps that he had no choice but to respond. And then as the trip progressed, we saw somewhat of a backtracking, if you like, him making it very clear that he has no desire to debate the US president, and instead wants to focus on his message of peace. Many read his statements as being comments, perhaps analyzing it and wondering if it's comments and reactions to Trump's statements. But he said those speeches were written 2 weeks before this trip. And so essentially had nothing to do with Donald Trump, wanting to turn the energies back to the current trip. Now, he's been talking and meeting with leaders, often of countries that are known to have strong leaders, long-serving leaders that hold a tight control on their countries. And so some have criticized the Pope in saying by coming to these countries, perhaps he's legitimizing their rule. But other pontiffs have done this in the past. And one really has to look, those who support the Pope will say, look at his words. He's touching on inequality, global leadership, leadership as well as war and peace in these countries. And so it's important to look at the message that he's bringing. And also, just the fact that he's there, it shines a spotlight on these countries that often really go under the radar.
Seema, thanks very much. Seema Gupta joining us there live from Rome. And in fact, we're just showing you some images now of the Pope arriving in Mongo. I mentioned that he was heading there in the east of Equatorial Guinea today. And those images there coming into us live, in fact, from the region as he takes part in a mass shortly at the Basilique of Immaculate Conception and a visit to the Pope Francis School of Technology. Seema, thanks very much in Rome there.